The pen didn't hesitate. It touched paper, moved once, and the marriage ended in ink. My wife stopped breathing when she realized I was signing. Not skimming, not asking questions. Signing. Her hand was still pressed flat against the table, knuckles white, as if she expected the paper to flinch first. It didn't. She had placed the divorce papers there to scare me. I knew that much. She had said my full name when she slid them across the wood, voice controlled, eyes sharp, a performance meant to pull me back into line, to remind me who still had leverage. I took it from her. The room went quiet in a way that felt intentional. No music, no traffic. Even the chandelier above us seemed to hold still. Behind her, two figures stood frozen, witnesses she hadn't warned me about. One was her brother. Expensive jacket, hands folded, watching the pen more than my face. The other was Maya, our neighbor. The woman people forgot was in the room. She stood near the doorway, holding a folder to her chest like it didn't belong to her. She said nothing. She never did. I signed the last page and slid it back across the table. The sound of paper against wood was louder than her voice when it finally came. "You didn't even read it." "I know what it says," I replied. That wasn't true, but I knew what it meant to her. Control restored. Her eyes searched my face for panic, for bargaining, for anger. She found none, just distance. That's when her expression changed. Not rage, calculation. "Good," she said softly. "Then you understand what happens next." Her brother exhaled through his nose. A signal, maybe. Or relief. Maya shifted her weight near the door. Her eyes flicked to the documents on the table, then away. She noticed details others didn't. The misaligned staples, the extra page beneath the top sheet. She said nothing. I stood. The chair scraped back. Another sound no one interrupted. "I'll have my things moved out tonight," I said. My wife blinked. "Once. That won't be necessary." I paused. Silence stretched. I let it. "You're not leaving," she continued. "You're staying. You just won't have a say anymore." There it was. The real threat. Divorce wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something quieter, something procedural. She reached for the papers, then stopped when her fingers brushed a page she hadn't placed there. A thin attachment, almost invisible. Her hand withdrew. I noticed her jaw tighten. Behind her, Maya's grip on the folder tightened too. "What's that page?" I asked. No one answered. The silence wasn't empty. It was crowded with things no one wanted to name. My wife gathered the documents quickly, too quickly, and stacked them into her leather folder. Her movements were careful now. "You should go," she said. "We'll talk later." I nodded, walked past Maya, and felt her eyes follow me. Not with pity, with recognition. As I reached the door, I heard her speak for the first time that evening. "Check the dates," she said quietly. No one responded. I didn't turn around, but I knew then that the paper I had just signed wasn't the weapon she thought it was, and that whatever she was hiding had already started to surface. The first call came before midnight. Not from my wife, not from her lawyer, from the bank. A calm voice asked if I had authorized the transfer scheduled for the morning. Large amount. Corporate account. My name still on it, at least for a few more hours. I said nothing. Silence did the work for me. The representative hesitated, then repeated the question slower, as if clarity could replace consent. I told her to freeze everything. She asked for a reason. I said the word divorce and watched it change her tone. Procedures snapped into place. Holds, notes, flags. When the call ended, the apartment felt hollow. I hadn't moved anything yet. No boxes, no clothes missing. Just the sense that something had already been taken. I sat at the kitchen counter and replayed the scene at the table. The extra page, the way my wife's hand stopped, the way her brother had gone still. Not surprised, prepared. I opened my laptop and pulled up the scanned copy of the documents I'd signed. I hadn't read them then. I read them now. Most of it was standard. Division of assets, custody clauses we didn't need, language designed to look fair while deciding nothing. Then I saw the attachment. Schedule C. It wasn't about separation. It was about liability. A clause transferring responsibility for a pending compliance review. Retroactive, quietly worded. dated 6 months ago. That date didn't belong there. I checked the metadata. The file had been created 3 weeks earlier, modified twice, last edit 2 days ago. Not by my wife. By a firm I recognized. Not divorce law, corporate defense. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Maya. She apologized before speaking, as if the apology mattered more than the words that followed. She said she shouldn't be involved. She said she didn't want trouble. She said she had seen something by accident. I didn't interrupt. She told me she worked nights cleaning offices downtown. One of the buildings belonged to a subsidiary of my company. She didn't know that at first. She noticed names. My name. My wife's brother's name. Repeated. On folders marked internal. She said she didn't read them. Then, after a pause, she said she did. Only enough to know they weren't meant for me. I asked her why she hadn't said anything earlier. Another pause. Longer. Because no one listens to people like me, she said. And because I wasn't sure you were different. That landed harder than anything else that night. She told me about a draft report, about misallocated funds, about signatures that didn't match timelines, about a plan to move responsibility to someone who would already be gone when questions were asked. Someone recently divorced. I asked her why she came to the house that evening. She exhaled. Your wife asked me to witness the signing. I closed my eyes. Witness. That's when it clicked. The silence. The extra page. The confidence. The divorce papers weren't a threat. They were an exit strategy. For them, I thanked Maya. She told me to be careful. She said the report was scheduled to surface within days. She said once it did, the narrative would be set. After the call, I sat in the dark and listened to the refrigerator hum. No music. No thoughts I trusted. I realized then that signing instantly hadn't ruined me. It had removed their safety net. And somewhere, in a system built to protect quiet crimes, someone had just noticed the dates didn't line up, which meant the next move wouldn't be legal. It would be personal. The first email arrived at 6:12 a.m. Polite, professional, written as if nothing had changed. It informed me that I was no longer required to attend the compliance review meeting scheduled for Friday. My access badge would be deactivated, temporarily. For my convenience, I stared at the screen until the words lost shape. They were moving faster than I expected. Not panicking, executing. I forwarded the email to my attorney. He replied with a single line. They think you're isolated. That was the first time I felt something like leverage return. I dressed slowly, deliberately. I didn't rush to the office. I went to the storage unit instead, the one my wife never visited, the one she thought held nothing but old furniture and tax boxes. Inside were backups, not dramatic, not incriminating on their own, just patterns, email threads, calendar invites that didn't align, expense approvals signed while I was overseas, innocent fragments that only mattered when placed side by side. I took photos, logged timestamps, said nothing to anyone. Silence was safer now. By noon, the pressure started coming from other angles. A call from a board member I barely knew, checking in with false warmth. A message from my wife's brother asking if we could talk man to man. I ignored both. At 2:47 p.m., Maya sent a photo. A printed notice taped inside an elevator. Internal audit update. The language was vague. The implication wasn't. My name appeared once. In the final paragraph. Alone. They were building a story that required no shouting. Just repetition. That night, my wife came home. She moved through the apartment like a guest. No anger. No urgency. She poured herself water and leaned against the counter, watching me as if I were a problem she hadn't solved yet. You should stop digging, she said. I didn't answer. You think this ends well for you? Her voice stayed calm, measured. They don't need you to be guilty. They need you to be plausible. I looked at her then. Really looked. This wasn't cruelty. It was strategy. She had aligned herself with something larger than either of us. A system that rewarded cooperation and erased complications. I didn't file to hurt you, she continued. I filed to protect what matters. There it was. The moral framing. The justification that made everything else acceptable. From the hallway, Maya's door opened. She froze when she saw my wife, hesitated, then stepped forward. She held out the folder. I found another version, she said quietly, of the report. My wife turned slowly. For the first time, her expression broke. Not fear. Recognition. Maya placed the folder on the table. Didn't open it, didn't explain. Just stood there, waiting. You don't understand what you're doing, my wife said. Maya met her eyes. I understand who benefits. Silence filled the space between them. Heavy. Unavoidable. My wife picked up the folder, then stopped. Her fingers hovered, as if touching it might finalize something she could no longer control. You think this protects you? She asked me. I shook my head. I think it tells the truth. She laughed once. Soft, almost fond. The truth, she said, is only useful when the right people hear it. She walked away without taking the folder. The door closed gently behind her. Maya exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Inside the folder was a single memo, dated incorrectly, signed by the wrong person. At first glance, it meant nothing. By morning, it would mean everything. By morning, the memo was already being buried, not erased, reframed. An internal bulletin circulated before sunrise, explaining the date discrepancy as a clerical oversight, a harmless formatting error. The signature, they said, had been autofilled. No cause for concern, no further review required. The system was correcting itself. I watched it happen in real time. Emails chaining, language aligning, people repeating phrases they hadn't written, silence from the ones who should have questioned it. Maya sat at the table, hands wrapped around a cold mug. She hadn't slept. Neither had I. They're closing ranks, she said. Yes, I replied, which means we're close. The innocent thing was the memo's footer, a small line no one ever read. Revision history available upon request. I requested it, not loudly, not officially, through a compliance portal I still had access to for another few hours. I expected resistance. I got automation, a system designed for trust, not scrutiny. The file downloaded without ceremony. Inside were 6 revisions, 6 timestamps. One of them fell on a day I was in surgery. Hospital records would prove it. Another landed at 3:14 a.m., approved by an account that had been dormant for years. My wife's brother. That was the moment the truth stopped being theoretical. My phone buzzed. A message from my wife. No words, just a calendar invite. Private meeting. Noon. Location redacted until arrival. A test. Or a warning. At 11:58, my attorney called. He spoke faster than usual. They've filed a preliminary notice with regulators. Your name is attached. If you counter now, it looks defensive. If you wait, it looks complicit. I looked at Maya. She was watching my face, not the phone. They're going to say you coerced me, she said quietly. Or that I misunderstood what I saw. That's already decided, I replied. At noon, my phone updated with the address. A conference room in a building I'd never worked in. Neutral ground. Meant to feel fair. I didn't go. Instead, I uploaded the revision history. Not to regulators. Not yet. To an internal ethics archive that mirrored everything automatically. A place no one checked unless they had to. Then I waited. At 12:37, the first call came. From my wife's brother. Calm. Friendly. He said there had been a misunderstanding. He said we should talk before things escalated. I let the call ring out. At 12:51, the second call came. From my wife. Her voice was different now. Controlled, but thin. You've made a mistake, she said. You don't know who you're provoking. I know exactly who, I replied. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. You think the truth protects you? She asked. I looked at the folder on the table. At Maya. At the small, overlooked details that had survived because no one thought they mattered. I think it survives without permission, I said. She hung up. At 1:09, an automated alert triggered. Ethics archive accessed by external reviewer. The system had done what it was designed to do. Quietly. Without asking who deserved it. Maya closed her eyes. Somewhere, a process had started that couldn't be reversed. And for the first time since I signed those papers, I realized the danger wasn't losing everything. It was what they would do next to stop that from happening. The calls stopped first. No warnings. No threats. just absence. By the end of the week, my name disappeared from internal emails. Meetings continued without me. Decisions were made in rooms I no longer entered. It felt less like exile and more like containment. The review moved forward anyway. Not publicly, not dramatically. An external team arrived without announcements. They asked for records no one had prepared. They noticed things no one had explained. They spoke softly and took notes. My wife didn't come home again. Her lawyer sent a message saying communication should go through proper channels. The divorce proceeded exactly as written. Clean. Efficient. The clause she had relied on was suspended pending review. Not invalidated, just paused. That pause changed everything. Her brother resigned 2 days later. Personal reasons. No comment. The memo that meant nothing was never mentioned again. It didn't need to be. Its revision history sat quietly in a file that kept getting referenced, again and again, by people who didn't speak to me. Maya was interviewed once. They asked her what she had seen. She answered only what she knew. She didn't speculate. She didn't accuse. She let silence do the work. When it was over, she went back to her night shifts. No one offered her protection. No one thanked her publicly. But her schedule changed. Her access badge started opening doors it hadn't before. The system adjusted. Months later, the findings were released in a report no one read cover to cover. My name appeared in it only once. In a footnote. Cleared. Not praised. Just removed from the narrative. My wife's name wasn't there at all. She called me once, late. Her voice was steady. Tired. "You could have warned me," she said. "I did," I replied. She was quiet after that. Then she said something that stayed with me. I thought being right was the same as being safe. The line went dead. The apartment emptied slowly. Not from anger, from necessity. I packed what mattered, left what didn't. The table stayed. So did the mark where the papers had slid across it. Sometimes I think about the moment I signed. How everyone expected fear, negotiation, delay. Instead, there was clarity. Silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a record. It keeps dates. It preserves what people hope will fade. Maya still nods when we pass in the hallway. Nothing more. The truth didn't restore what was lost. The marriage didn't survive. Neither did the version of power that required my consent to function. But something else did. A small thing, easily overlooked. The knowledge that when the moment came, I didn't beg to be spared. I let the paper speak. Subscribe for more true-to-life stories where power is tested, truth moves slowly, and consequences linger long after the noise fades. And if you're reading this thinking of a moment you handled differently, maybe that story isn't finished yet.